Good evening, music lovers, and welcome to episode 4 of Between the Bars. I've been away for a few weeks. I do apologise. This is definitely worth the wait. Tonight's chat is with Jesse Cooker, and he is the founder of the first and only officially recognised religion based on rock and roll music. It's a fantastic chat. We talk about spirituality. We talk about gigs as a religious experience. We talk about spreading the good word, Jesse's group, his movement, how they came to be, and everything in between. Don't forget, you can catch me on Instagram at the Mixtape Perf, or hit the subscribe button at the top of the page, and that will keep you up to date with everything I've got going on. So let's get into the chat without further ado. I hope you enjoy this one. Good evening and welcome to Between the Bars podcast. Now, around about, I would say 6 months ago, I was sitting with my mate Al Macker in the pub while we sort of discussed the idea of me doing a podcast, and he was very encouraging. And initially, I just said to him, I don't want to interview famous people. I just want to interview normal people, normal everyday people, but who've got remarkable stories about music and how music's come into their lives and what music means to them, but just everyday people, not famous people. So I said, right, okay, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then out of the blue, I got the opportunity to interview Rick from the band Ash, and then it sort of didn't start how I wanted. But now, episode 4, fortunately for me, a few weeks ago, Jesse dropped into my DMs on Instagram, sorry, and he's exactly the sort of person I was thinking of when I started this podcast. Just wanted to talk to people with remarkable stories about music and how it's come into their lives and affected their lives. Welcome, Jesse. Thanks for coming on the podcast, mate. Really appreciate it.
No, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me or taking an interest in my story.
Okay, so just tell us a little bit about Jesse, the guy, the everyday guy, and then sort of bring us forward a little bit into your story and how you came to start the, I would say, movement, if I can call it that you started.
Okay, so sure. Yeah, so Jesse the guy, he's a veteran of the U.S. Army. I was did 10 years active, 11 reserve. I fought in the first Gulf War and the second one as well. I'm a father of 4. My kids range from between 23 and a very angry 15-year-old daughter with 2 in between.
There's no other type of 15-year-old daughter. They're all like
that. You are not kidding me. If there is, please, I'll exchange, or no, I would never exchange my daughter. But having 3 boys, I thought I'd seen it all, but I have not. I'm married to just an incredible, supportive person, Lisa. Yeah, I work in the pharmaceutical industry and drug development. I actually, much to the surprise of a lot of our followers, I have a very high demand job that requires a lot out of me, but I do very well in that position because I work extremely effectively under pressure. So the thing that I'm most famous for, I guess, outside of this, what we're about to talk about, is my ability to coordinate effort and move things forward, because that's kind of what I do in my job. Mm-hmm. So it was almost a natural fit that I would establish and then coordinate the development of the world's first, best, and only religion based solely on rock and roll, called Dingir Zu.
That's awesome, and I got to be honest. When I read your story and you slid into my DMs and asked me if I would be interested in joining your movement and getting involved, it was just like not even a question. I was like, yep, that's a bit of me straight away. I'm all over that 100%. And it was sort of a little bit tongue in cheek, but I think, like, for me and people like us, like, genuinely, music has always been, like, I feel like, my religion. And and it's what I believe in, and it's been one of the very few kind of constants in my life, like, you know, forever. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
there was a bit of a sort of tongue in cheek side, but also on a serious note, if you were running an actual cult, sign me up, mate. Like I'd be I'd be in, sold.
So, it's so funny. Well, let me start with the like backstory or origin story, if you will, and because you're spot on. Like, I mean, I feel the same way. You and I are brothers from different mothers because I mean, music has just been a constant in my life. And I won't call myself a musical snob. What I will say is that throughout my life, I feel like people, like I listen to music differently than other people. And I'll just give the example, when in White Room, if when that Clapton's about to come in with one of the greatest rock solos of ever, in any genre, and you don't feel that slight burning sensation on the inside of your nose because your eyes are beginning to well up because you're about to hear something that is just so iconic and classic and indicative of what rock and roll music is, then I would argue maybe you're not listening to music the way the artist is intending for you to listen to it. So that's not me being a snob or saying that, you have to listen to it this way. You know, consume music however you want or however you like, but this is how I consume it. And it is very, like you, it is very personal and very emotional to me. And the
Mm.
bands and music that I like, they are usually bands that emote
Mm.
and inspire a feeling in me. So yeah, about 6 months ago in October, I came into work one day and I was I was lamenting with a fellow coworker of mine about how, why isn't there a religion based on rock music? There's religions for everything else. Why not that? And so we decided then and there that we were going to establish a religion based on rock music. And at first, it was just like this dinky little Facebook group where there were 5 people, and most of them were friends who would agree to do anything that I asked them to do. So,
Yeah, that's
and
most of my podcast subscribers.
yeah, exactly. So, you know, these are just people who are completely committed, all
Mm.
in. Jesse, if I call them in the middle of the night and say, look, there's this body in my trunk. I don't want you asking questions about it, but I got to get rid of it. They're bringing shovels and they're meeting me.
Yeah.
So, it kind of just started out as a jokey thing, and we would share videos, and the other people slowly started to join. I mean, I don't think we cracked 20 for the first month and a half members.
Mhm.
And then I did kind of not I don't want to say a stupid thing, but I approached the Dingir Zu co-founder. Her name in the group is the Archbishop of Grunge, but her real name is Kimberly McHale. And I said, Kimberly, I looked into actually establishing a religion, and it's kind of a pain, and I'm not sure if we should, take this next step. And so she looked me dead in the eye and she said, it sounds like someone's got a commitment problem. And then I was like, all right, okay, the brakes are off.
Yeah.
So here we go. Sent in an application for articles of incorporation to the North Carolina State Secretary of State. And 5 days later, they sent me a response back. And Dingir Zu is an official religion according to the North Carolina Secretary of State. Now, there's a second step to establishing a religion that is probably more consequential from
Mhm.
a legal standpoint, and that's requesting tax exemption based off of that. And that is a step that we did not take, do not intend to take,
Mhm. Yeah.
because it has real financial implications. And we want this to be fun. We don't want to make money off of it. Like, we've got a very strict rule that
Mhm. Yeah.
we ask our members to like things or to support things, but we never ask them for something.
Mhm.
it's one of our unspoken rules of the group. So yeah, that's how it all started, was kind of on a dare.
Everybody needs a co-worker like that.
Yeah, so Kimberly is also the wife of the lead guitarist for one of our bands. It
Oh,
had to
okay.
be Snake. If you were to meet Kimberly, you would say, she's a PhD in immunology, an extremely brilliant individual, but Kimberly rocks. You would just
Yeah.
never know it on her surface. So
That's one of the great things I think about music is like rock and roll. There's no class, social, economic, ethnic barrier at all to it. It's if you want to rock, doesn't matter.
yeah, and I think, it actually brings us together. It makes us realize that, we're not so different from each other,
Mhm.
which, it's really hard to tell people that in this world today, that at our core base, we're the same. We
Mhm.
love our friends, we love the things that we're passionate about, we love our children, and we want to do right by others. I mean, that's generally the same about all of us. And one thing that reminds us of that fact is music. We're up to 173 members that I've convinced to join this fake religion.
And they're spread right across the world, right? It's not just local to you now in North Carolina.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So we are in 20 different countries. We're in about half of the US states, on 5 different continents. Yeah, with our 173 members, probably 174 at some point during this podcast.
Mhm.
But we take a pretty wide view on what rock is. So we started out, we had 20 some members, and for whatever reason, a cover band joined the religion, Royal Monaco. They're out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I've seen them on other Facebook groups that we share. They're posting funny comments and stuff like that. So I said, hey, I think you guys might enjoy this group. And then that gave me the idea of, we should try to recruit like up and coming bands, like bands that
Mhm.
don't have a platform.
Yeah.
Because, honestly, that is like kind of one of the things that when we started the group, I wanted to remind people that rock is still out there. People of our generation are extremely spoiled, right? In our face, in movies, in TV, on the radio, and there weren't all these other different mediums to which it was distributed. So was in these very controlled channels, but it was in your face. And we had such a plethora of rock music and that's just no longer the case. And if you would have asked me, and I'm guilty of this as well, 10 years ago, what was the latest, greatest band that you listened to? I would have said the White Stripes, because I mean that was the last popular band that I listened to on the radio, and I just haven't kept up with the technology, or I hadn't kept up with all the different mediums. Then about 3 years ago, I heard, so I would have said, yeah, rock's dying, rock's dead. And then about 3 years ago, I ran into a band called Royal Blood by happenstance.
Yeah.
They were just on, I finished listening to a playlist. I think it was either Spotify or Apple that suggested you might like this song.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I mean, wow. If Royal Blood, if this is a new band and they're making music, then there must be other bands out there. So
Mhm.
that's when I kind of started searching for new rock
Mhm.
but that's what you kind of have to do now, right? Is
Yeah.
you have to be
Yeah.
part of the right Facebook groups, listen to the right
Mhm.
podcasts, and you'll
Yeah.
get exposed. So that's another main driver behind Dingir Zu, is I wanted to provide a platform of, of members and bands, fans and bands, where people can hear new music that I'm doing the searching for.
Well, that's kind of why I was interested as well, because it ties in with the idea of my show, the radio show that I do, the Mixtape. That's all about introducing people to new music, and I play a lot of, because it's on community radio. I play a lot of local Western Australian bands that don't have a record deal, or they're not that getting that many plays on Spotify, and I do try and give them like as much exposure as I can. And I was so stoked to see Rat Salad join Dingir Zu, and that if you'd have said to me which band that you regularly play on your show would be the most likely to join, it would be them. They've got such a fantastic sense of humor, sense of fun. They just enjoying the hell out of everything they do, and it suits their sort of style perfectly to be in your group. So yeah, I was so stoked when they joined the movement. Yeah, it was brilliant. That was a great moment. Um, how was the without being too? I don't want to be disrespectful to any particular religion or nation, but we did converse briefly via email around the response to your kind of email pitch that you've been sending out, and I think personally your movement and your pitch would go down way better in places like Australia and New Zealand and the UK, because they generally take life a little bit less seriously, and particularly around sort of religion. I think some places it can be, it's a bit of a hot topic and people don't want to touch it. It's a hot potato and all that. But just to give an example of what I mean, in Australia, if my mate Davey rings me up on Sunday and says, "All right, you coming to church?" We ain't worshipping. In Australia that means go for a beer. So that's what I mean
Yes,
by
I'll go to church.
yeah, that's what I mean by it. It's a lot more lighter, and it's not taken as seriously and not looked at as such a sort of political hot topic, I think. But yeah, what has the response been in general?
So the kind ones, respond back to me and say, thanks for the information. And then I got close with a local radio station, a local college radio station. I won't name them. We went back and forth, but talks broke down when they referred to Dingir Zu as some weird cult without a purpose. And I was like, I'm like, I think the purpose is quite clear. We're trying to provide a medium and a platform to share music of these great bands that we're discovering. And I think to call it a cult is now sometimes we use the word cult in the group, but it's
Tongue in cheek.
again, yeah. I mean, we're not asking anyone for anything. We're not sucking you into the group and then saying, "Hey, do you have any property you want to sell or donate to the group?" We don't do any of that. And if anyone did, like, I'm very sensitive, and we are very protective of the culture of the group. And if anyone were to solicit any member, they would get excommunicated in a heartbeat. Like, there's two things that we will not tolerate at all. There's no discussion of politics. Your music, you can be totally political. You can post Rage Against the Machine. What's that guy's name? I mean, I loved him as a kid. Now I can't even remember his name. Cat Scratch Fever.
Ted Nugent.
Ted Nugent. Yeah, you can post Ted Nugent. I cannot believe I blanked on Ted Nugent. But we don't want to hear any of the bullshit politics. There are plenty of Facebook mediums and groups for that. This is we want people to feel free of that. Music is a vehicle for escapism. And if good music will take you outside of yourself, we don't want you to bring people back into themselves and into the daily lives that are blasted through the media. We don't want any of that. And the second rule, hard and fast rule that will get you next, is trying to fleece from the other members. I don't mind if a band puts their merch store on the site. In fact, I encourage that. That's how these bands are going to stay alive, is by supporting them in real ways.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I don't ask for money, and don't harass the bands.
I wanted to ask you, like, we talked about religious sort of experiences earlier, and I was sort of this last week I've been sort of thinking about the chat that we got coming up that we're having now, and sort of thinking to myself about music and how it kind of does in a lot of ways parallel kind of religion. And for me personally, like the group experience of being at a concert, it's probably the closest thing I've experienced to kind of what I would full disclosure, Jesse, I am as atheist as they come in terms of conventional religion. Do you know what I mean? But I am
Mm.
100% on board with what you're doing. With that in mind, the closest thing I've ever come to kind of a religious experience is at a gig, is at a concert, and there's two ends of the scale, if you like. The first time was I saw Oasis at Nebworth in 1997 with 125,000 people all singing
Wow.
Wonderwall and Don't Look Back in Anger. And that was everybody there knew. Literally, Noel Gallagher walked on stage and went, "This is history." Like that, but that's
Mm.
that's a bit of showmanship or whatever. But it really was like it was. Everybody felt it like that weekend. So that was one time. The second time, there's a band I'm not sure if you're aware. They did have a number one hit in the early 2000s in England. The band's called Nizloppy, and the singer's sort of solo now. But they were directly responsible for Ed Sheeran. He was their
Oh,
roadie. He was their roadie, and he was a massive fan, and he
wow.
followed them around everywhere. And then they started giving him like support slots and stuff like that, and that's kind of how he got his sort of first start going. But I've seen them, and they do a lot of crowd interaction and participation and stuff like that, and I've felt that there with 200 people in the room, same feeling of just like
Mm.
togetherness, oneness. Yeah, unbelievable like experiences. And like I say, that's the closest thing I've ever felt to like a religious kind of experience. And I just wondered if you ever experienced anything similar, concerts or anything like that you've been to.
Absolutely. Like I said, Mark, I think we should do an ancestry and check to make sure that you and I aren't related. So during their, I think it was their 2017 tour, I took my eldest son, Benjamin, who he and I are in lockstep with musical taste, and thanks to me. And we went to go see Metallica in Philadelphia at the Lincoln Financial Field. Just as one was concluding, he and I turned to each other and we had tears in our eyes, and we embraced. And then immediately they jump into Master of Puppets. So you have 75,000
Yeah,
people, with their arms pumping,
yeah, yeah.
master, master. And it was like an outer body experience.
Mm,
And then last year, I got to tell you, I don't have a whole lot of inhibitions when I'm
mm,
at a concert. Like if the music is moving me, it's just going to move me.
mm.
And Royal Blood at the MMR barbecue in Philadelphia, it was that's not a bad venue, but they were not top billing. They were not at the billing. I think it was the Pretty Reckless was the top billing. For me, Royal Blood would have been
Mm,
the top billing.
yeah,
But like that was the best 60 minutes of live music I've ever heard in my life. And I was outside of myself again, along with my son,
mhm,
and we're like hanging all over each other. And, we're just looking into the music in the sky. And I mean, it was just it was a pivotal, a significant emotional experience. And like you,
yeah,
I'm agnostic, you know,
yeah.
um, I'm still waiting for the evidence. I think I told you I'm an epidemiologist by
Yeah, you
training.
did.
So I'm a very evidence-based type of person.
Yeah,
I like metrics. I like measuring things, and but yeah, I mean that's how music enters me and fills me with joy. That's just inexplicable, and so it's the closest thing that I can think of to um, how people describe their religious experiences. Um,
yeah,
so
yeah,
that's kind of how it
yeah.
feels for
I
me.
think I think the two are very closely linked. Like when you look at evangelical, churches and how they use music in their services to sort of, whip people up into that kind of, frenzy. It's a very similar experience, I think, to a live like sort of concert. And if it's someone you love and you've been listening to for years, and yeah, I do think the parallels are really there. And on a similar sort of note, I've got a very very dear old friend who I was his apprentice when I was 16. His name's Richard, and he is a God-fearing man. He's Anglican. I remember having a conversation with him about. Are you familiar with Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan?
Yes.
He's a for anyone listening who's not, he's a Pakistani, what is called Qawwali singer, and it's a kind of a sort of religious chant. And he's had a lot of sort of crossover success. He's been on movie soundtracks and he's done stuff with
Hmm.
Eddie Vedder. Massive Attack have remixed one or two of his tracks. I remember saying to my friend Richard, I was talking to him about when listening to Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan for me is different to listening to any other kind of music. It makes me feel good in such a different way to any other music. It's like the way I described it to him back then was it's like having a hug from my mum. It's like and a hug from my soul. That's what it feels like when I listen to Nusrat
Mm.
Fateh Ali Khan. And that really made me question my atheism and what I was all about. Just listening to him just made me question, who I am and what I'd believed all these years. I remember talking to Rich about it and he said, yeah, but there's a difference between religion and spirituality because he's a wise, much older man than me. Yeah, and that was like, oh, yeah, you're right. And Nusrat for me is just he passed away in 1997. But for anyone listening, I would heartily recommend the album Must Must by Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. So we just had Easter, Jesse. Have you got any kind of plans or anything afoot for any kind of religious holidays for Dingir Zu? And what dates would you want to recognise or sort of mark?
So, we've just hit our 6 month mark of existence, or we're coming up on the official, according to the North Carolina Secretary of State, our official 6 months. So we might be doing something for that. We are actually having one of the bands in the group, the Runaway Grooms. They're an outfit out of somewhere in Colorado. They're touring and they're going to be here in my town on Thursday. So we're calling it the first congressional meeting of Dingir Zu Thursday night to go watch the Runaway Grooms, and those guys are great. They know that we're bringing a whole bunch of people to the show. We got T-shirts made with the Dingir Zu emblem on the front and a link to our link tree on the back. So we're really looking forward to that. So that'll be a huge day.
Yeah.
So no official holidays planned. We glom on to other holidays and just make them our own. So Easter was our bunny day, and
Right. Okay.
yeah. It's easy. I mean, we don't want this to be too much work for everybody. So might as well slide in and attach ourselves to existing celebrations.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, for Christmas, over the Christmas holiday, we did the Archbishop of Grunge did a whole 12 days of Christmas, because there's a lot of rock music around the Christmas time, or that's Christmas centered, So
Yeah.
Scott Weiland, he put out an entire Christmas album. One of the bands in the group, Bear Ghost, did a Christmas light show, so that was super fun. So we're more holiday leeches.
What's next for Dingir Zu, Jesse? What have you got planned for the future, in terms of growing the group and spreading the good word?
So mediums like this help. We've had a number of podcasters, rock journalists join the group. There's a guy that goes by the handle the Desert Cyclist. And he does a lot of reviews for like more desert, stoner, doom rock. He's in the group Heart Shaped Box. You and Adam were having an exchange when you had first joined, hopefully getting on some of those shows or getting some press around that. Honestly, we've got 60 plus bands in the group, and I mean, they're all making music. They're all, some level, there's some significant talent there. And some of those bands are going to be, Tiger Cub. I don't know why Tiger Cub joined the group. but they did. First of all, I don't know why anyone joined the group other than I'm one hell of a salesman.
It's your dazzling, charismatic, high gala personality, Jesse. That's what it is, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I do make a pretty strong pitch for like, look, if you want your music to be shared, here's a great place to share it amongst other bands and
Yeah.
fans that appreciate really good music. But so yeah, Tiger Cub, they're going to be at Louder Than Life. They're going to be where else are there? Oh, they're going to be at the MMR barbecue. They're going to be at Aftershock. We have one of our bands, White Rabbit Object. They just played South by Southwest. They're going to be at Summerfest.
Yeah.
There are 3 of our bands are on one ticket. Acid Mammoth, Geobia, who I adore Geobia. Oh my God, I love them so much. Margarita Witch Cult. All 3 of them are going to be playing on the same ticket at the Heavy Psych Fest in Switzerland in May. In fact, Geobia tried to talk me into buying a ticket to come see the show. So it's really, I mean, these are, super talented bands that are, all touring, all have the capability of making it.
Yeah.
Some of them, I mean, they're at different stages of their career, some of them, right? I mean, some of them, most of them, I would say, are full-time working stiffs who are trying to make a career out of, rock and roll. And so, it depends, as you get older in life, you start doing the calculus of, well, I want a family, I want a stable environment, so I should probably invest in my daytime job. And so, the other stuff rolls away, but all these bands they're holding fast, and they're making great music today, which is really exciting. I was just going to say, if you go onto our Spotify playlist,
that's literally what I was just going to say. Yeah. So what I'll do is you got a Spotify playlist amongst your profits. I believe they're known as. The bands are called Prophets, and the journalists and the podcasters like myself, we are the apostles of the group. Love that. So yeah, so there's a Spotify playlist for all your bands in your group. So what I'll do is when I put this on Spotify, I'll put a link to that playlist in the description, and obviously I'll put it out on my socials as well. And because we're all about sharing the good music, right? It doesn't matter, we do it different ways, but we've both got the same goal, I think, at the end of the day. Okay, it was like I said to you at the beginning, this was going to be a quick fire 5, but it's a quick fire 4 now. Like I said, they're normally tailored towards bands and artists, but I've tried to swap around and make it as good as I could. If you could have any prophet and any apostle join your religion, who would it be?
So the Psychedelic Porn Crumpets, I've been after them. I've actually been talking to their manager.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Well, I'm shameless in my approach.
Yeah.
And it's very authentic. And I'm like, look, you might think it's a little lame, but it's super cool and it's really fun and blah, blah, blah. And I was talking to him anyways to try to coordinate when they're coming back to the States in October. So I was begging them to do a show here in this area because, we've got like 6 universities around us. I mean, it's right in the wheelhouse. And for Apostle, I hadn't thought about that. I really like the way our apostles are panning out because they are like right inside the wheelhouse of our culture. And I love the stories that they tell, the bands. Every band has, their own unique story, but there's some common threads about how difficult it is to produce rock music in this day and age and to make a living off of it. Yeah. So, I'm not sure. I mean, there's a couple that I've reached out to and said, hey, why don't you, come on board and, or at least check us out. See, they all say, yeah, that sounds funny. And then they never join.
They never show up. Yeah. Okay. So my radio show that I do and my Instagram handle is the Mixtape. At a later date, I'll probably drop a sort of edited version of this chat into the radio show as well. So the show's called the Mixtape. If you were making me a mixtape, Jesse, what would be your track one, side one tune that's gonna to draw me in and make me want to listen to the rest of the tape?
If it were outside bands outside of Dingir Zu, it'd probably be Hello Operator from the White Stripes.
Yeah.
That or Moon Age Daydream by Bowie. Because
Classic
I love
choices there.
how, yeah, both of those songs, I love songs that immediately disrupt the silence. And I'm a sucker for a harmonica, so Hello Operator. So, but yeah, and Bowie was my first musical love, passed down from my sister Susan. She heavily influenced my musical taste, and David Bowie, Changes One Bowie was the first album I ever had.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Still have it.
Funny you mentioned Cream at the start. Clapton was my first musical love when I was probably 16 or 17. I got into Clapton. I think Journeyman was out at the time, and it was a year or so away from the Unplugged album. I lost my virginity listening to Eric Clapton. That's giving away too much info. That. But yeah,
I don't know the song I was listening to.
I can tell you it was Nobody Knows When You're Down and Out. That was the track as well. Oh, that's classic. I've never told anybody that before.
Oh my God. Well, we're making news. We are making news today.
We are. If you could only ever listen to one album, Jesse, what album would you pick?
Man, that's tough. I've always said that Dark Side of the Moon is probably the most complete album end to end. I've questioned that. I don't know. Again, like my tastes are very eclectic, and I question that statement when I listen to the Lazy Eye Songbook. Man, that album has really got me going. And, at first you put it on and it's kind of like, oh, this is kind of light psych, progressive. The more you listen to it, the more intense you hear that underlying bass tone that carries you along, and it just builds up an anxiety and intensity, and it has like these little bursts. And the second side of that album just has you so kind of amped up. I love that album. Inside the Groove.
Mine would be Grace by Jeff Buckley, just because it kind of it covers. It's the only album I'm ever going to listen to. It covers a wide sort of range of sort of genres. You've got like Corpus Christi Carol. You've got the ballads. You've got the Grace and So Real and tracks like that. So yeah, for me, it encompasses a lot of different genres. So it's Jeff Buckley, isn't it? What's not to like?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Inside the Group, though, you should check out Bear Ghost's Blasterpiece. No pun intended, but Blasterpiece is a masterpiece, and they're probably one of our largest Blasterpiece. Yeah, end to end, that album is very complete, and it's intended to be listened to end to end. But I mean, it gets some real highs and real lows, and man, those cats are talented. Like they're just musically. It's like I've described Bear Ghost as, imagine you're sitting in a room with surround sound, and you're watching in the TV in front of you. You're watching a Tim Burton movie, and out of the left speaker is Queen. The right speaker is The Darkness, and behind you, the speaker behind you is playing Pantera, and you're on methamphetamine. That is Bear Ghost.
Okay, last question, Jesse, and then I'll let you go. This is, I don't know, I know you've listened to my podcast before, so you might have already had a bit of a think about this question, but this is a situational dilemma that I found myself in 1998 at a music festival. When you go to a festival and you get the run times and you have to work out, who you're going to see, who you're going to miss, and how fast you need to run between stages, and that kind of thing. And on this particular day, headlining the main stage were the Verve, who were 2 gigs away from breaking up, and that was it. Finished over. The guitarist had already left, and they had a session guitarist in for the last 2 gigs. It was a very acrimonious split. At the same time, headlining the dance tent was James Brown. and I had to pick one. Worst decision I've ever had to make. Where would you go, Jesse, in that situation?
So I don't know that that you can ever miss a James Brown show, right? I mean, I just don't. I mean, how do you say no to that and then live the rest of your life without guilt? I mean, that's just my personal choice. But
I'm going to stop asking this question now because I'm getting zero validation from anybody on the choice that I actually made on the day, which was to see the Verve. I
I
don't
mean,
regret it.
it's not like it's an embarrassing
No,
decision,
no, no, it's
right?
not. No, no, no,
You
no.
and I
Um,
completely get the quandary that you're in.
yeah.
But
And I was a massive fan of both as well. And the way I rationalised it to myself on the day was like I never got to see the Smiths because they split up and they split up forever. That
yeah,
was a split for the ages. They're never getting back together ever. And I had that feeling about the Verve as well. And Bittersweet Symphony and Urban Hymns was out at the time and it was massive. They were just right at their peak of popularity and they were splitting and James Brown had been touring for years, even though he was quite old at the time. You know, he was in his 70s. He'd been touring for years, and I thought, hey, he'll be back in a couple of years. But yeah, like I've said on the other podcast, you probably heard, James Brown unfortunately passed away a year or two after that gig, and the Verve got back together about 5 or 6 years later for a fourth album. But like again, as we talked earlier about religious experiences, and my favourite song, I'm not sure if you're familiar, is from the Verve's first album, which is called "See You in the Next One, Have a Good Time." Most beautiful melodic, soundscape and acoustic guitar and just Richard Ashcroft singing to a loved one who's, not with anymore and hopes to see, another time. And it's a beautiful song and they hadn't done it. The moment he walked out on stage, and every time I talk about this moment, even on a podcast or if I'm talking about someone, I get goosebumps. And I've got goosebumps right now talking to you about it. Just the moment he came out on stage with just an acoustic guitar, I knew. I knew he was going to do it. And they'd done the encore and everything, and they'd all gone off stage, and then he just came back on his own and did See You in the Next One, Have a Good Time. And it was one of the greatest gig moments of my gig going life. And I would never ever want to not have experienced that. But at the same time, like you say, James Brown.
yeah. I mean, can you pass that up? I mean,
I
clearly you
know, I
made that
know, I know.
decision, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. With Chris Cornell
I've
when
seen Chris
he
Cornell
was,
live solo. He was amazing.
yeah, on the Euphoric Morning tour.
Yeah,
Just was him on stage alone for the
yeah.
first 6 songs, acoustic guitar,
Mm,
and Chris never had a problem playing the hits. Right?
mm.
There's a lot of bands out there. It's like, no, you're going to listen to our latest album. Not Chris loved the hits, and man, it's probably it's just a reminder that check in with people. Everyone struggling with something, and man, the fact that he's gone is just like weighs on me.
Well, on a slightly happier note, I am actually waiting at this moment in time for the vinyl copy of Nobody Sings Like You Anymore to arrive at my house, and I can't wait for
Nice,
that. Yeah,
nice.
I saw him on when did I see him? It would have been, I was still living in England, so 2005, 2006 maybe. I'm not sure what tour it was. I think he had I don't know if it was a bootleg or whatever, but there was a live in Sweden acoustic gig getting around. And it was a completely acoustic tour, and I saw him in London. And funny enough, I was talking about it with Tom. He was a singer-songwriter I was managing at the time, and we went together. And I interviewed him with his new band last week, and we were talking about the same gig. Yeah, that was one that I will never forget. Like seeing Chris Cornell in London was an amazing gig. On that note, I'll say goodbye, Jesse. All hail
All
Dingir
hail
Zu.
Dingir Zu.
Yeah. You got a tattoo. Oh, that's brilliant. Is that a real tattoo or is it a fake one?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, mate. That's brilliant.
So I got this. The goal was when we hit 100 in
Yeah,
the group, and I
yeah,
promised this when we were at like 20,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
never thought we were getting to 100. But I'm a man of my word, and I love it.
That's it.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Cheers, Jesse. Thanks a lot for coming on the podcast, mate. I really appreciate it.
Cheers, Mark. Take care.
I know I always say this at the end of every single podcast, and I do always genuinely mean it. But what a lovely fella Jesse was. What an absolutely great bloke. And I look forward to many more chats with you, Jesse, over the coming months and years. And the best of luck with Dingir Zu, mate. That's it from me for this week. Next week, we'll be having a chat with Perth singer-songwriter Siobhan Cochin. So don't forget to tune in for that one. Again, follow me on Instagram at the Mixtape Perth, or just hit that subscribe button at the top of the page, and you'll be notified every time there's a new podcast. Until next time.